is it so inconsistent?
Construction's hard.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the Construction is Hard podcast. Gary and I have been trying to bring you just the little lumps of coal that you might not expect, little gremlins in your business that we've had the opportunity to talk with contractors and identify and share with y'all. And these lumps of coal, the idea is you can just shovel those in and it keeps the train running. These are little things that you can consider, and maybe it helps move the needle or move the train forward. That's all we're trying to do. Let's just give you these simple little things. We're not trying to be out in the stratosphere. So Dustin Acker to my right. I got Gary on my left. Gary's 6 mimosas in. Dustin's 5 mimosas in. I've only had 2, so I can't keep up with these guys. But Dustin is coming to the RIVET team. He joined us here just a few months ago, really. And I want to brag for a minute. Dustin has actually evaluated and implemented multiple workforce management systems in multiple different organizations. And this is somebody that understands what a tool, but more important, what a workforce management ideology and a team approach and what it really can do to transform a contracting business. And so Dustin joined our team. He is helping contractors today. If you were to evaluate RIVET, he is literally one of the people that can help guide and train you and your teams kind of through that journey. Dustin, tell us a little bit about kind of your 20 plus years in the industry.
Yeah, so I started out like everybody, started off as an apprentice on day one, worked all the way up through the field ranks, journeyman, then foreman, then general foreman. And then like Brian said, for the last 7 or so years, worked for 2 different contractors, kind of in labor operations, evaluated and implemented multiple different, I think I've covered all of them, the 3 that are in the space.
The 3 made for construction, I think you've got all. But most importantly, which was your favorite, Dustin?
Well, the one that I joined the team of, hence the reason I'm here. But yeah, no, it's been quite the journey, a lot of fun along the ways, and this truly does make the practice of labor management much easier.
Which one's more important, Dustin, the buttons or the process and the team?
By far the process. Obviously you need the buttons, but you need the team aspect and all the different philosophies behind it to make it work, and then you push the buttons along the way. So
everybody, in the upcoming season, you're going to be hearing a lot more from Dustin. Gary threatened to retire on me, but we kept him around, so he's going to stick around. We're all going to keep doing this podcast in season 3, so keep your ears and eyes out. But today is actually just hitting on what Dustin mentioned, is the importance of the team and the process. And you guys have already heard Gary and I go round and round about this is a team approach, this is an ideology. That's not actually where we're going with this today. So, don't turn us off your radio quite yet. But today we wanted to talk about, we're out here in San Diego, by the way. We're at a big national convention out here. And while we're here, we're sitting down and we're going, what do we want to talk about? And we don't talk about things that we don't actually give a shit about. So I hope you guys believe us in that. But unless we really feel like there's something that we see and have spoken with contractors about that's worth the time, we don't just, believe it or not, we don't just say shit to say it. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about originally was actually the concept of who in the business should actually create or be involved with labor requests. And for those of you who are not as familiar with RIVET or workforce management or kind of this labor operations idea, consider a labor request simply means identifying a need for labor. But it's not so much the aspect of offering a request. It's rather the moment when you say, give us more people. I am opening the doors, I'm opening the gates to more labor entering the project, and thus more labor hitting the budget, right? And yes, tools like RIVET today can help you go through validation exercises, etc. But really what it boils back down to is who is ultimately going to be the choke point that says we offer or we are willing to bring more people onto this job and thus impact our labor budget, and who should or should not be involved in that. Now,
Well, regardless of, throw RIVET out of the equation for a second, there's always a request made in some way, shape, or form. And Dustin was just mentioned about the processes and how important they are. That's a part of the process, right? So when you start changing your processes, you are fundamentally changing your company. So you keep that in mind, that it isn't the request, the term request really isn't RIVET specific.
No, it could be a conversation in the hallway. It could be a post-it note on the board. It could be quite frankly, somebody putting a number in a cell on the spreadsheet, right? It can come in all different forms or facets. In fact, that's one of the things we're going to talk about later is a little bit of it's so fragmented today, and there are so many different ways that groups today identify or accept labor onto a project that it's one of the biggest problems we see is labor can be added to a job, but it doesn't mean it's actually in line with the schedule or with the budget. And so we were going to originally talk today about just, hey, should a project manager be actually the ones ultimately deciding, yes, we would like 3 more people for 6 more months? Or is it actually a foreman who is classically corresponding with a superintendent or a labor coordinator and saying, to get the work done, I need this many people, and that's that. There are different approaches. There's not one that we will say is right versus another, but there are 2 schools of thought here. And when we all sit down inside the 4 walls of these contractors that we have the opportunity to work with, there's always this moment where, I don't know about you guys, but I'm waiting. I can't wait to introduce it because it is a concept that is, when you really think about it, we should consider, well, the foremen have always corresponded with the superintendent or a general super or labor coordinator or dispatcher. That's how it's going to be. Well, wait, when you have a tool in place, you can put in a filter or a control measure. And is that an opportunity to get the project stakeholders and the labor stakeholders aligned and collaborating more often? So we were going to talk about that all day. And then Gary said I was a dumbass for thinking that. And so we went on a different route here. What really this leads us to is not about who creates a request. It actually is a much bigger issue. And the bigger issue is, you've heard us talk about it, but team buy-in. And I cannot tell you, for those of you listening to us, if you already have Rivet and you already have your entire team bought in, good on you. You are literally probably one of 100. It is less than probably 5 or 10% easy, maybe less than 5% of the groups we work with truly have project managers or project stakeholders and field stakeholders and field leaders all engaged and consistently collaborating on the labor situation and on the labor needs.
Those contractors have captured the power of the process, and they've captured the power of Rivet. They are leveraging the Rivet platform and helping their processes along at the same time to a degree. It's much more involved than like you say. I think it's about 95% of the contractors aren't leveraging it as well as they could be, simply because their processes aren't in line with what the platform has to offer. It's a very powerful platform. And I like to equate that to Excel, where people purchase Excel and 90% of them use it to add up columns and use it very basic. 10% of the people understand the true power of it and they leverage it to the max. And so it's a very difficult concept to get across when you're talking to people that haven't had the opportunity to adapt their processes to the platform and leverage them both and to maximize their efficiencies and their productivity, because it is a high level topic. And I think it's something that contractors have to grow into, and you need patience to do so, right? You need to apply both of them at the same time and basically have the vision of what this can really do by taking the team approach.
And is it to not get full adoption? Is it laziness? Is it not having discipline? Is it not someone coming down with iron fist and forcing the process? Or where does the issue come from?
All the above. It's different for everyone. Some contractors, they don't have the interest. Some contractors have trouble, analyzing what their true productivity issues are and the root causes of why they're not performing the way they would like to. But it's a vision, right? And this whole idea that I have this group managing labor and I have this group doing everything else but labor, I think is becoming antiquated. It's outdated. It is the way of the past, not the way of the future, where you have an opportunity now with the platform that's out there to bring a lot of transparency to the labor management processes that you haven't been able to do in the past. And when that happens, you can easily put together a very high level of collaboration across your team and start bringing people into into play and hold people accountable at that point?
I'm going to argue with you. I don't think it's easy. That's what we're talking about today. It's actually, for a lot of shops, it's hard to get the collaboration and the commitment and the buy-in. And that's what we're talking about today to kind of bring it back on both of you.
But what I meant by that, Brian, is the platform makes it easy if you apply your processes.
The platform, yes, the platform opens the door. It's your choice to walk through.
And so that's the easy part, because the platform is there to assist you. The hard part is understanding your processes as it relates to the platform and how you tie those two things together. Because one cannot stand alone. If you've not figured out how to tie them together, you're really missing the boat. Because you aren't leveraging it the way it should be. There's a golden opportunity there.
And it sounds hard. You say it's easy, and it actually is pretty easy if you can get everyone to buy in. And it's not a full start over, but you're going to have to pretty much change your processes completely around and move forward.
Yeah, it's a whole new way of thinking, right?
And that's what we're talking about. We're going to talk about that buy-in. And here are some, and what we are sharing everybody is literally the groups that achieved it. What were some of the approaches that they took to help create that? So if you're sitting here thinking, my foreman would never use a tool, they're not going to log into one more system. My PMs aren't involved in labor. I would ask you, consider this. There are groups that have done it, and when they're doing it, you're making up it's a good time in the industry. We were just talking about some of the margins that we hear being thrown around on jobs. The groups that have done this, guess what? They're the ones that are picking the jobs that you get because they're taking the best ones.
Yeah, they're kicking ass.
They are.
Their profit margins are up, and their efficiencies are up. Their productivity's up. They have fewer employees than they normally would have.
They are not going through that skull drag of, everybody's making some money, I would say, right now in the industry, but they are not suffering the way to get there. They're picking the jobs that are lucrative. They're doing it in controlled, sustainable.
You know what those companies are, I think? They're professionally managed companies that just happen to be an electrical contractor or a mechanical contractor. That's the difference.
I would agree.
You got to strive to become that.
So we're talking about, this idea of this tool is opening the door for this team approach, as the gentlemen are talking about, and what are some ways so we get that team engagement? And I want to first just offer up a little bit of vulnerability on the sense of RIVET as well as the software industry at large. This is not our first rodeo. We've seen this a time or two. We, as well as I believe the software industry, do not do a great job of helping support, and I say support, even I would use the word press or mandate, that our partners, the contractors we work with, helping formulate what is an actual executive vision. And you're going to hear us say that a lot, an executive vision. What is the ultimate reason, the why behind you, the reason you would do something like implement a workforce management initiative, meaning a tool, a new process, asking the people to change. And that executive vision, imagine it needs to be 1, maybe 2 sentences. This is a vision that has to be, it's not in the clouds. It is not about synergy and all that shit. It is just about, we struggle with this. We struggle with margin fade in the last 20% of the job, and it's ridiculous, and we need to fix it. We struggle with retaining our employees because we are sending them all over the place because we can't plan out their assignments across projects. We have labor coordinators that are burning out because this job is hard. You guys heard the Sisyphus episode. I mean, it is a burden to carry this. The executive vision could be something like, we have a labor coordinator leaving the company or retiring, and we need to be able to replace what they were doing across the team. It is simple, concise statements that are actually achievable, but that executive vision is what is at the top of the pyramid, and it permeates out into the executive vision. Then becomes, what are the 2 to 5? And I say it needs to be a few numbers, because if there's too many, we're not going to achieve it. But what are the 2 to 5 objectives we have? In order to eliminate the profit fade or the margin fade that we're experiencing, we need to identify a plan, know when we're going over budget, align the labor, and get off the job. Great. That's some great end states. These are things, by the way, that move the profit margins for the entire company. These are not just small-time commodities. These are big things, but they got to get boiled down into a simple executive vision. Now, I'm going to kind of challenge you guys. You guys have both done this. What were some of the executive visions or just the simple straightforward reasons that you had for asking your teams to go through this journey? We didn't rehearse this, by the way.
No, we didn't. I'll go. I knew there was something wrong, and I've probably said this in previous podcasts, so I'm going to repeat myself. Forgive me for that, but something just wasn't meshing, right? We had everything we had was good. The project managers were good. The estimators were good. The field force was great. We had prefab. We were doing 3D coordination, BIM. Every element of the company was kind of standing on its own. And we weren't a united force, right? Because we had a bunch of silos built. Everyone was in their silo. And when projects went over budget, I couldn't hold anybody accountable because we didn't have the processes set up to hold anyone accountable. Project managers, I don't know why the labor went over on this job. Go ask the superintendent. Superintendent, he's not getting the feedback from the PM about what's going on with his job costing and what he's doing with his earned value or percent complete analysis that's affecting the financials. The work in progress reports would look like an EKG, and something had to change, right? Well, it was evident we had silos. Let's demolish the silos. And so that was really the first step in my fundamental change of the company, was demolish the silos. And with that, what you have to do is you have to take people out of positions that they've been in the past and reassign them to something that they're probably better at anyway. It didn't cost anybody their job. It didn't cost anybody any money. They didn't get their salaries or their hourly rate reduced. But I knew that we had to take a more team approach. So I ended up having the project managers assign labor, or not assign labor, but start helping manage labor with the help of the supervisors, the field guys. And we did that even without a platform in place, even before these platforms existed. And as time went on, platforms showed up, and when they started to become useful, it was just like, a marriage made in heaven, because the processes were already in place. And this was a way of offering relief and a better way of doing it. And so everyone kind of naturally took to that. And so we ended up with project managers watching the labor, doing the financial side of it. We had our supervisors supervising. We had our managers managing. And so when the project managers would look at a project, and they'd be doing their analysis on what the situation was with timing and the labor budgets, they would communicate that to the labor managers, and they would be the people that actually assigned. So we had collaboration, we had accountability, and we had a much better run company, and we were much more profitable by doing so.
So Gary's going through what we typically see from the partner or the vendor or the software side is Gary's describing, like, I have these things happening across the business, right? To get that into a concise statement, like, this is, again, we didn't rehearse this, but I would say your executive vision, because we were working together at that time, your executive vision was to create a consolidated and real-time visibility for your team to look at labor.
And team is key.
Team is key. But in the end, the end was, we needed to get the team visibility into the labor situation. And then you broke down the silos, et cetera.
Yeah.
And if a partner can help just from a third party perspective, listen and then say, this is what it sounds like. We got to get it all back down to simplicity. That's what you can go into a room of PMs and say, here's what's going on. Here's why.
When you tell the PMs, you got this great idea, right? And you tell the PMs, guess what? You're going to help manage labor. You know what the first reaction is? Especially, from our situation, they've never had to do that in the past. It wasn't a good reaction. What am I going to do? How am I going to do this? Well, they're thinking that they're actually going to be the people moving the chess pieces around on the board, when that's not anywhere near what ended up happening is they were watching the financials and paying closer attention to the labor budget than they ever had before. And that frees up the supervisors to do what they do best, and that is supervise. They're looking to see how we're being maximizing production in the field. They're doing field stuff, and because they can't do it all. So that little bit of assistance coming from the project manager and getting them engaged, and when you start seeing profit margins increase, well, everybody feels pretty good about that. You know, you no longer have somebody's foot up their ass because their job's losing money, because you can pretty much bring almost every job in at or under the labor budget, which in our case, prior to doing this, didn't happen often.
Feels a lot better when you're trying to win versus trying not to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What were your guys' executive visions, or kind of like the North Stars that you all were chasing?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was, before platforms, it was a spreadsheet and then a weekly manpower meeting, typically Thursday morning at about 8 o'clock. Half the people wouldn't show up for one reason or another. The other ones would show up and they would sit in the room and like a stump. They wouldn't say anything. You'd have to try to pry information out of them. It was so counterproductive that there was no information given, and then everyone would leave the room with no marching orders. Nothing was collaborated on. And then I'd go back to my desk and start hitting job sites and try to figure stuff out on my own with no buy-in from the PMs. And it just had to change. We had to get a process that everyone was finding. And by the end, we weren't having a big weekly manpower meet anymore. We were still meeting weekly, but it was at a much higher level, just talking about what's going well on projects, what are we seeing from different vendors and stuff. And really the whole process changed. People were opening up, talking about their jobs. There now was visibility into the manpower of what's needed on the job. When can person A leave to go on to the next project? And there was just a lot more collaborative. There were still people that weren't fully bought in. It was kind of taking a little bit of time, but we were certainly a lot further along than we were previous to having a platform.
You weren't revealing the spreadsheet every Friday or whatever day you had it.
Well,
yeah.
And that right there, your executive vision for that, which we're going to talk about, there's different kinds and different types of executive visions or mission statements for different parts of the organization. For yours, it's reduce the time or gain efficiency in what it took to plan labor.
Yeah.
And this is a real thing. Everybody listening to this, if you're a contractor, you have the manpower meeting or the labor meeting. And I guarantee you it's every 7 days to every 14 days. And I guarantee you get everybody in one room, and to Gary's point, you unveil the spreadsheet, the grand opening. We've talked about this too. We talked about spreadsheet hell, but that's happening everywhere. Have you ever really considered what the implication is to the business there? What the time commitment is, or also that we do labor planning, which is a constant changing beast, and we make those decisions in 1 hour every 7 to 14 days. Are we really on top of our shit if we're doing it once? And it's the greatest risk, the most volatile thing. And so gaining efficiency, or even just getting a grip on the labor meeting, that's a really pure executive vision, and it's something that we can tell, it's measurable. If the labor meeting goes from 3 hours to 1 hour, or from 1 hour to 15 minutes, or just show up with your shit ready and we can go, or
disappears.
Entirely.
In some cases, they've disappeared.
It's almost taboo for us to suggest that.
That's what happened for us. The time was still used. We still met as a group, but it was no longer a labor planning meeting.
Yeah.
That meeting was always out of date before anyone got in the room. You'd sit in that meeting and you found out someone moved on Tuesday that you didn't know about.
Executive visions, and they're at different levels. So let's share some of the common ones we hear. Okay, so there's basically 4 levels or 4 different groups that there usually needs to be a vision or a North Star, a mission statement for. The first one is operational leadership. Okay, the company leadership. This is your VP of Ops, your COO, your CEO. And if you don't think they should be involved with the workforce management exercise, I got a surprise for you. Like, it has to have them bought in. And it starts with them, and we'll talk about why. But operational leadership, why does the company care about this? What is the company trying to achieve? Or what could the company be better in, right? We're not asking you to make this stuff up out of smoke. This is stuff that, does the company know when the backlog is going to be high or low? Do we have workforce capacity for the next year? When are we going to need to hire or fire? It could be, hey, how do we increase the profit margins because we know we're not utilizing our people? This is the ones where it's like, hey, we're trying to build a core workforce and we keep losing people because they're tired of getting pulled all over town, or the local, here, there, otherwise, or traveling for those merit shops listening. So you have one that's operational leadership. That's number one. Number two, there needs to be a vision. It could be the same one, or it could be a subset, or it could nest into this operational. That's project stakeholders. That's number two. So you have operational leadership, number one. You have project stakeholders, number two. Think this is for your PMs. This might be for your project executives, or even for like an estimator or somebody bringing in pursuit jobs. The project stakeholders, who is concerned about the project ending on time and on budget. Number three is your field leaders, okay? So field leaders, the guys getting the work done. They don't necessarily care maybe if it's gonna be on budget, but they're just gotta get the work done. This is your foreman, your superintendents, etc. These are the ones leading the situation out in the field. That's number three. And number four is also, don't forget, our actual team members. The guys on the job sites, the guys and gals getting the work done. Our apprentices, our journey workers, whatever it might be, even that temp labor. How do we make sure, what is the vision of why we would ask them to reply to a dispatch or something of the sort, right? The first three are every single time. If you're gonna have a sustainable initiative, you need the first three. That fourth one, don't forget, it's a great benefit sometimes to give your people the stability or develop your people. So one, operation leadership, two, project stakeholders, three, field leaders, and four, the field team themselves. There should be either the same or a vision tailored to each of them. And that's how you get these ones that it's like, hey, as a company, maybe we want a workforce management initiative because we want to forecast where the company growth is going to occur and when and where we think we could get the people to grow there. Number two might be, hey, our project stakeholders need to understand when their jobs are getting off kilter. How do we align or stabilize the WIP? The field leaders might very well be, hey, we need to know, and we want to make it easier to get people on and off the job. That communication and coordination piece around the schedules. Know when people are leaving, know when people are going, etc. And number four, that field team, that could very well be, we need to understand what people are good at, where they could use development, and we can develop our workforce up. We can communicate with them and let them know where they're going next. Hey, you're going to park in this area. We have champions of our customer advisory board here at RIVET that talk about their favorite thing with RIVET is they wanted to get the field team more information. Pack your cold weather gear, you're working inside a freezer tomorrow. Hey, bring extra water, you're going to be out on the road next week. It's having that information that changes the employee's experience, and it's something that you can actually communicate and ask for their buy-in. But these visions happen at different levels, and it's important that we take a moment to really consider at the different levels, what should those be and why are they important?
The key there, what you're talking about, is improving communication within your company. I've heard that for 40 years. Communication.
They'll talk about it for the next 40 too.
It's not going anywhere, right?
For sure.
It'll never.
It won't. But all these visions you're talking about, and actually having like a foundation to allow all these visions to happen and communicate that to one another is golden. You have the opportunity to create what I call an education program, not a training program. And you've got something that's always there that is the foundation to provide that. The field people start to understand, hey, these guys are putting a lot of planning into this. They're not a bunch of knuckleheads that just move people around. And there is some rhyme or reason, and here's why they do it, and here's how they do it, because they can see it, right? All the way from the CEO down to the apprentices. You have that ability now to collaborate and communicate at a level that you've never really been able to do before because it's in real time.
These platforms, they're a vehicle.
Yes.
They are
yes.
simply, and again, I can't stress this enough.
And that's the power of them.
It's just a vehicle to get you where you want to go.
It is the people that are leveraging it to the max understand the power of the platform, and they understand the power of their processes and how they interrelate. And the ability to train off of it, educate off of it, and collaborate.
So we have these visions, right? We're communicating them, to Gary's point, across the company, but we're talking about buy-in ultimately, right? And the adoption approaches that I think we want to get into a little bit here is really around, okay, side note too, if you just don't have a magical vision, that's okay. That's actually the majority of the industry. In any given market, the first 5 to 10% are what they call visionaries. The rest are actually groups of us, and I'm that in a lot of different markets, of I want to see what somebody else is doing, and then I go, what are they doing? Tell me about it, right? We're talking about both. Whether you're a visionary or whether you're somebody that's just hearing about this stuff, that's okay. If you even just have the hunch that I think labor operations, or I think we could be a little bit better in this area, ask whoever is identifying this to you, whether that's somebody like Rivet. Don't trust us. Fine. Don't trust us. Ask us to point you to contractors or to other customers that can tell you what their visions were, and you can learn from them. And anybody, by the way, that's our first thing. I have some friends that are out here actually with us at this event, and I tell them, hey, go talk to them. They'll tell you better than we can in our own business. Talk to other people that have done it, and if they're not willing to introduce that to you, there's a problem, right? But also be clear why you want it. With these visions, hear what your peers are doing. You might pick up on something that somebody else saw, and you could easily jump on and get on that train as well. These adoption approaches, though, we're going to kind of break these down into 3. And I want to preface this with, again, we're not telling people how to run their business. We're not saying this shit is easy either. This stuff is hard. Everybody's in a unique scenario. All we are trying to do, I would say, is offer up, here are some past paths that have worked, and if you try them, you might find better success than if you just kind of went about it and have some intentionality, have a plan going into this, right? And so these adoption approaches, I also want to specify, these are not just for construction. So these guys come from the industry. I come from a little bit of the industry, but also more from the military. And these are very, very correlated and have direct parallels into how we communicate missions and end states and intents to massive groups of people. You think your 1,000-person shop is big? I would challenge you, a division is bigger. It is. There are a lot of people that you got to communicate and get moving to achieve a common goal quickly. These are very similar, okay? So these adoption approaches that we're talking about here, one of the first ones, and this was actually kind of from you, and I agree with this 100%. It's something we're going to be...
You want to say that again?
Gary's not a total dumbass, if you didn't know.
Thank you.
But with that, the first approach, I'm going to first go over the 3. The first one is sit down with each team and convey the why or illustrate the vision with each team. The second one is introduce the carrot. And the third one is be ready with the stick. Okay, so sit down, describe the why or the vision. Number 2, introduce the carrot. Number 3, be ready with the stick. And so we're going to kind of go through each of these 3 and how they look and what your guys' experiences have been. But the first one, I'll pass it to you because you're all about it. Sitting down and describing with the team that vision or the why and just kind of what's going on.
That's hard. That's a hard thing to do because you really have to understand the vision yourself. And as this is starting to become clearer and clearer in your own head, it is difficult to communicate that to the office staff. But you have to, and you have to do it in a group, and you have to have patience, and you have to, the meeting may take 2 hours, and that may take multiple days, but you have to make sure that everyone is on the same page as far as what we're trying to accomplish and why their duties are changing. And you may have to show examples of earned value, work in progress reports. You may, and show them how this tool and these processes are going to help.
Be vulnerable too. That's what
Yes, well, and that's part of the buy-in, because I don't have all the answers. And so it is as much of a research project for me as it was trying to relate my vision to the office staff. We got there, and I don't know if I really did a very good job of it. It probably took longer than it should have, but we did get there. And then once you can tell that once you have an ally, a project manager will have that aha moment and say, okay, I get this. Now you have an ally that's going to help you work with the other ones to help them see that vision. That's number one, because you're asking people to do a lot of things that they're not comfortable with, and you're putting them outside of your comfort zone. You know, when the general superintendent becomes the labor coordinator, with the help of the project managers, that general superintendent no longer is the crutch. And that's a pretty uncomfortable feeling when you've been operating that way for 60 plus years, and all of a sudden you turn that on its head, but you turn it on its head in such a way that you're really just getting more people involved. So you have to take the time, because if you don't do that right on the front end of this, you're making a big mistake, and you're going to fight that. It's hard to get the club out when you don't do a good job explaining why you're going to get the club out,
And that includes
not the stick, the club.
The vulnerability piece too of we talk with a lot of groups, and we always joke that there are those that are willing to have the hard conversations, and there are those that you can just tell they don't. And part of the vision communication, I think, is being comfortable explaining to people, look, we suck at this. We suck as a team at this, and we could do better, and we need to do better. And here's why.
And part of that is you got to look in the mirror. Because if you truly understand and believe what your vision is, it's pretty easy to talk about. Mm-hmm. But when you don't, and you haven't done an evaluation on how you really feel about this, it's a hard sell, right? And so that's probably one of the first steps, is do a self-evaluation and say, yep, okay, this is what I believe, and you've done enough research where you can back it up, and now you've got some things to build on.
And it won't always be perfect. There's going to be setbacks, or someone's going to think they're getting screwed on a particular decision, but never, right? And that's where the buy-in can fail, at least in my experience, when someone feels like before the process even got off the ground, they got screwed the first time.
It's exactly the sit down with each and describe the why. You need to be able to say, here's what we're doing. One of the best implementations, I've said this in the past, I've ever seen, was a Canadian group who they first took time to bring everybody together, and they conveyed, I think we have a problem with blank. And they first got everybody to buy in and say, we think it could be better. That's all it takes. It's not it doesn't have to be the magic recipe. It's just, we all agree we could be better. Great. And he paused everything. He said, okay, cool. So he went out and started talking with different groups, identified us as a group that, hey, you can help me just get better in this. Maybe that could be the executive vision, by the way. Just get better in labor operations. Just get a little bit more efficient. Just have a little bit more control. Fine. But then he came back to his group when he described the vision. He said, hey, remember when we all first said we could do better? Yeah, yeah. Okay, here's a way that we're going to do that. And everybody from the first meeting was, what do I need to do? I agree. We're all in this together. And it helped eliminate some of the guys who are like, this is going to screw me over. No, we all agreed we were going to work together to be better. And that leads us into actually number 2 here. So that executive vision, right? Number 1, first step, sit down with everybody and convey and illustrate that vision. That's, hey guys, that could be 30 minutes or an hour meeting. Pull everybody in over lunch and just, again, explain. Here's where we could do better. We all agree. Do you all agree, etc.? And like, this is what we're going to try to do to improve or fix that or combat those problems that we're facing. Number 2, as you go. So imagine now you are starting to implement a tool, or you buy, and this doesn't have to be software, by the way. This could be another prefab process or who knows what, right? But now you're introducing the carrot. And this part is, okay, we've begun this journey, and are people going to naturally jump on board? And don't wait to just see, well, we'll see who jumps in and who doesn't. Don't wait for it. Introduce the carrot. And that is, in our space specifically, with labor operations or workforce management initiative, it's actually the team approach. And there's this way that you can convey, it's actually not about the stick in the beginning. It's more about look around. If the 3 of us are project managers, let's say, in our scenario today, right, or even field stakeholders or foremen, if we're all PMs and Dustin is the only one forecasting his projects and conveying his future commitments or needs in the system that we're all supposed to be looking at, and Tim behind the camera is the guy that's going to be allocating the labor. Well, if Tim can only see Dustin's jobs, guess who's going to get the best labor because we can plan ahead? Going to be Dustin. And when Gary pisses and moans like he does every fucking day, pretty soon it's going to be like, well, Gary, you didn't put your projects in this tool we can't see. And over time, Gary and I get jealous because you've got the best guys. But in the end, we can still communicate with everybody in the beginning. listen, you all need to be a part of this because it's a team approach. If we all are participating, we have one workforce. There's only one workforce that we're going to need to use to accomplish all these jobs in a timely fashion and in a profitable fashion. And if we're all contributing to the picture, we can all expect to get the guys when we need them. And sometimes we're going to yield. Sometimes Gary's going to get the guy I want. And that's okay because I know, well, it's going to come back later. And if it doesn't, by the way, there's also accountability and
Am I
transparency.
still gonna piss and moan when I do?
Probably.
Every
Knowing
day?
you.
Yeah, okay. I just wanna know where we're going here.
But it goes back to this team approach, this team buy-in is, it's not about you. Something we used to say in the Army, it's not about you. It's about what is the collective team going to be able to achieve. And that's something that's important to convey is, especially with project managers, they are accustomed to planning their jobs in a silo. And my job needs this many people, and then I'm going to need to get rid of this many people, and that's going to make me successful, and that's great. But if I'm not willing to take the time to work with the team on that, it's not feasible for the labor coordinators to get it done. And I know you've lived in that. I mean, that's been your life, both of you.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but you have to have the transparency to be able to do that. And it has to be pretty much in real time too. You know, I keep saying that, but the reason I keep bringing that up is because it's so darn important.
Yeah.
They got to see it.
Yes.
Yeah, outdated information is no good,
No.
even if it's only an hour.
And if you're, everybody's got their own spreadsheet, right? Where those guys, they have to go away. In today's world, there's no real reason for labor management spreadsheets. There's better ways to do it.
It is, yeah. In short, I would say, like as you guys can imagine, it's not comfortable, genuinely. Despite however we may, it's not comfortable sitting up here like throwing this shout into the world. We joke when we see people in real life, and it's like, oh yeah, I listen to the podcast, and you kind of have this nervous moment of like, well, shit, what do you think? Because you're putting yourself out there. But I will say this at risk is, if you're using spreadsheets, even a smart sheet, I don't care however fancy you think it is. I am telling you, talk to people that have a real tool, and you're going to realize there's a whole lot out there.
I'll say this about that, is that a lot of what you see in Rivet today, a lot of the charts and the things that in it came off of my spreadsheets.
Not just yours, but a lot of people from the industry, actually.
Yeah, but initially, it was the initial idea to do these
labor
charts.
chart.
Yeah, right. My spreadsheet, as it stands today, compared to the platform, absolutely sucks.
I would say everybody's does, by the way. I have not come across one company, and we're talking a lot, that's like, oh yeah, we really do everything. And by the way, if you're one of those out there that's like, well, I break it down into cost codes and tasks, good on you, buddy. None of your field people actually do. By the time it gets to that level, they are not paying attention to that spreadsheet anymore, and it all goes in the wash.
Yeah.
It really does.
And I put a lot of effort into that, and it's outdated. There's no reason to use it. What's in the platform now gives you the visibility that you need, and everyone can see it now in real time again. So, spreadsheets need to go away.
So, number one, sit down with your team. We're talking adoption approaches. Sit down with the team, convey the vision. We just talked about the carrot. The carrot is be a member of the team. Don't screw your buddies and your brothers and sisters over here about trying to get the right people. We have one workforce, and we all need to contribute to the bigger picture, right? So introduce the carrot, and then number three is you got to have the stick ready. And what I mean by this is it's not running around like a damn drill instructor and yelling at people and stringing them up or whatever. It is way more about being prepared to hold the line. And what I mean by that is, we always joke, I love this saying, it is hard to herd the cats, but it is really easy to move the milk. And so if you've got people that aren't buying in, what we mean by that is it is hard to chase them and force them to do the right thing. But ultimately, what is the one ultimate denominator of this whole thing? You need labor on your job. And if you want labor, you got to come to the milk. You got to come to the tool or the place where the company is going to allocate and plan labor. It's easy. This is why Gary says it's easy. If you're willing to hold the line and just simply tell people, hey, I didn't get 5 people. Did you use the tool that everybody else is buying into? No? Pound sand, buddy.
Well, yeah. Shock collars help too.
Shock.
So there comes a point where you have to make that transition from the carrot to the stick or the club. You have to do it, and that's where you get to the point where it's no longer thou should, it is thou shall. Someone has to lead, someone has to make those decisions, and people need to, at some point, either voluntarily or involuntarily fall in line. And you're going to find out a lot about your people, and you're talking about teamwork, you're talking about everybody pulling in the right direction, and so that is the transition right there, from the carrot to the stick or the club or whatever you want to call it.
So here's the funny thing. We hear this more often than some of you may think, but you might be in these shoes and this is okay. But, well, what if I hold the line and they still don't?
Find somebody that will.
Yeah.
Don't overthink it. Yeah, fine.
Yeah, it's not that hard,
Yeah.
right?
That's the honest answer. And if whoever's ultimately in charge isn't willing to make that decision, they need to appoint someone that will.
Right.
And you need to move on, because every organization is bigger than one person that's not willing to play ball.
You need to support. That's a big thing. Every organization is bigger than the one person that's not willing to play ball. But I'll say this, and it pains me when we see it. There are some labor coordinators. There are some general superintendents or labor coordinators who the Sisyphus episode again is where this guy or gal is carrying this boulder up the hill of allocating labor across every project. But if someone like that gets bought in, and then they need the PMs maybe to support, and the question is like, oh, well, will they really support? Like, I don't want to force them. You are screwing over that team member who is willing to actually be the one doing the things day in and day out. You're going to drive them away if you don't ask for people to contribute a little bit of time and a little bit of effort. But again, at some point, VP of Operations, that's who this is, COOs, VP of Ops, it's going to come back to you. I was in the, as an officer in charge or as people leading businesses, like it has to come back to you of, are you going to have that tough conversation when the time comes? And let's be real, compared to a lot of things out in the world of like storming the beach or not, this is an easy conversation. It's when the guy leans in your doorway and asks you for people, what do you say?
Go fill out a request in the platform and RIVET.
It's not talking to people like it's, life or death, where it really is just little moments, but you got to consistently and constantly hold that line of when people are trying to like, yeah, I know, but like just send me a couple guys. No. Go use the tool, help the labor coordinator that's already bought in, or if they aren't bought in, by the way, go the other way. Get the PMs to buy in, and the labor coordinator, their job gets much easier because it's all just right in front of them. We get more labor coordinators bought in actually these days than we used to.
Yeah, well, one of the things that's happened, I think, is that the contractors are starting to realize this is more than just a labor management tool and solely for the labor manager.
This is not just a scheduling tool. This is not just a tool.
It's so much more than that. That's the 10% of what it does. And so we're getting beyond that with a lot of prospective customers, current customers. They start to understand, boy, this thing is pretty powerful stuff. And so if you put it in place and all you use it as dispatching software, you're probably using 10% of the power of the platform, right? And so they're starting to understand that this is more, and I think that particularly the labor managers that are starting to look at this holistically is that they understand that it's a tool that's going to really help them in the long run and make their lives a lot better, because that is a high stress job. And they get so good at handling the stress, they don't even know how much stress they're under, but and it wears on people. So any relief you can give them is a positive.
Getting a labor coordinator or director of field, wherever it might be, getting them to leverage a tool. I mean, that's getting you, started, getting you moving first gear, maybe second gear. But until the team, whether it's project managers or foremen or field stakeholders, until you get more of the team involved, you're never going to get into that next gear.
Well, and who's the most respected guy when it comes to labor management? It's the labor coordinator, right? It's the general superintendent, whatever his title is. If he buys in and he starts leading the way he can and understanding that he can leverage this, the buy-in comes pretty easily, with the people in the project management team and the field leaders.
So having the stick ready or the club ready, depending on how, whatever size, have that stick ready. We're not talking about yelling at people and chewing them out. We're talking about simply, why aren't you doing what you're supposed to do and not giving in and saying, oh yeah, just go talk to Bill down the hall and he'll get you a couple guys. Like, no, at some point you've got to decide what's the line in the sand and toe that line. Have the uncomfortable conversation too. Hey, Dustin, you have 4 projects that you have no forecast on. How do you expect us to get you those people? Have the conversations, but you have a tool now. To Gary's point, you have a tool that can say, from what I can see, none of this is happening. Why not? And then they can tell you, I think it's hard to use. Okay, let's set up additional training. And if it continues on, hey, maybe the software is the problem. Fine, go find a better tool. More often than not, that's not actually the problem. We got a lot of people that paid a lot of money just to make this shit easy to use. And I don't like technology in my personal life, so I can attest to that. Okay, so number 3, right? We number 1, sit down, explain the vision. Number 2, fall back into the carrot first. And then number 3, be ready to have the stick. Be ready to toe the line. But, okay, hey, Brian, you're full of shit. Fine. Let's say you don't do any of these things. Talk about the get out of jail free card. The PMs, if you don't do any of this stuff.
Well, you can't hold anybody accountable, right? You've created a situation where they have an out on everything. And if you can't hold the PM staff accountable for what you want to have set up, who are you going to hold accountable? You certainly aren't going to, it's not going to be the labor manager's accountability. And you fall back in the situation we were in where the whip report looked like an EKG and things bouncing all over the place. We're losing our ass in the last 20% of a job. It was a mess. But we were a good contractor. We always got the job done and we got it done on time. It just depended how much it was going to cost us, right? And then we get lucky and make money on other jobs and we were profitable, but not the way we could have been and the way that company is today. And this is weird, but it's true. Even a calm falls over the office because there's a guiding light. Everyone knows what your teammates are doing. There's a process in place for everything. You're keeping an eye on where your labor curves are. You're preventing margin fade. There's processes in place to prevent that once you hit peak. And just the awareness of these labor curves is again, that's golden as well. That prevents a lot of mistakes that get made in transferring people and future planning, bidding work that you shouldn't be bidding because you really don't have the workforce capacity. It's all right there in front of you now. There's no reason not to use it.
We're building teams at RIVET, and it's the same thing. You and I talk about this. I don't sleep well at night if I can't get the visibility into what is going on. And then at the same time, we can't go off and do the things that advance the business forward if we don't first trust that we can walk away from the day-to-day stuff. And it's huge, but the PMs get that get out of jail free card. If you never create some kind of transparency or process around that labor budget, the most volatile and the most risky part of any of our self-performing contractors' jobs, they have this get out of jail free card, which is, well, I didn't control the labor. I didn't see that. I didn't know. And if you do that, when is it ever going to get fixed? I mean, I know you guys had to deal with some of that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's tough, but once you get to the top of the hill in your process, it's pretty easy to sniff out the black sheep that aren't doing their job.
Right. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So once everyone's clicking and understands the process and doing what they should, when someone's not, it's very apparent.
Well, what happens there when you get to that point is the masses take care of the problem.
Yep.
You're not the one that's going to have to take care of it.
Right.
The rest of the team is going to go, that person is not pulling his weight, and you can ask the right questions as to why, and you can decide how you're going to handle it. Which way you're going to go, and that makes it pretty darn easy.
That's
for sure.
We used to call it the E4 Mafia. You let the boys figure it out, and they go fix it on their own, and it's the best thing because I don't want to know. Just fix it.
Yeah.
Send in Uncle Sal.
Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about adoption approaches now. Just quick summary here, right? We started the whole episode off. We wanted to talk about, okay, who should be creating requests or identifying needs for labor. In other words, not necessarily validating, but rather send 5 more people to my job, right? What is that actually? Because that's a big deal. There's a lot of groups that have maybe an initial good projection, but they fall off when it comes to controlling more labor hitting the job. Maybe the foreman is getting influenced by the GC and saying, I better see more people out here, rah, rah, rah. They want to be a good foreman, so yeah, send me some more. They don't realize what it's doing to the budget and to the ultimate project success. So we started off talking about where and why do some companies have PMs engaged today? Why do others not? That's what we wanted to talk about, but we felt obliged to first go through this adoption process of, okay, well, if you were going to ask that question, how do you get them to believe you? Let's kind of wrap this up here today with, and I'm going to actually have you two kind of on each side. Why would you have project managers involved with labor requests? Why would you have foremen maybe involved with labor requests? I'm not saying that's what these two guys believe, but like, let's just tell us first why you see certain groups, because you've seen a number now. Why do you see certain groups taking the foreman to superintendent sort of approach? Are those union shops, merit shops? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest reasons they're doing it is the PM just doesn't have involvement in the labor. That's just never been the process. And they need to have some sort of, not necessarily control over it, but they need visibility. They need to be part of the conversation. If the foreman and the project manager are not having conversations about the labor on the job, that's a major red flag in my opinion. But like Gary was saying earlier, as long as time has gone on, it's typically been the PM is out of it and it's the foreman talking to the labor coordinator.
Can I interject here a little bit?
Wait, first, how do I, as a business leader, how do I know that the PM and the foreman are corresponding at the right times?
You don't.
Pretty fucking hard without a tool.
Right, exactly.
Unless I have a tool or milk to move and the cats come to it, it's really hard to know if
you
it's
like
actually
that milk
happening.
analogy. You know, that's a good
just
one.
Like my train.
It's a good one. I like that one. But, you know, typically what you're talking about, Dustin, is I think you typically see that in a union contractor more than you do in a merit shop. And I believe that it's 100 years of the collective bargaining agreement dictating the chain of command. So that was the natural migration, right? Okay, we have general foreman, we have foremen, we have, you know, journey workers, we have apprentices. That's the way the structure, and it's even defined in the collective bargaining agreement. It's hard to break that mold, right? Because it's ingrained in people. Because these people are smart. They do a good job, you know, but I do believe there is a better way. And so, and the merit shops, some of these merit shops have proven that. And we see it. You know, you walk into a merit shop, a lot of times, you know, the PMs are right there and they're involved. But you walk into a union shop and, you know, 9 times out of 10, it's the labor managing labor.
You guys, I mean, union shop, but you start a structure almost.
Well, we decided to try to run our labor like a merit shop typically does. And it worked. And it didn't hurt anything. We still have the supervisor supervising. And nowhere in the collective bargaining agreement does it say that the labor side, the general superintendent, needs to manage the labor. They're supervising the labor. All we're doing is inserting the project managers to help from a management standpoint.
Something else.
Managers, supervisors, superintendents, project managers.
Which there's an episode on that too, for those in the deep cuts of construction is hard. But I want to make one more note. So my degree was in construction, which basically means I know shit about how it actually works.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and so on that note, even the people that are being educated or brought into the industry, when we were going through, I was in the number 3 program in the nation, right? Like, we were taught labor. You're going to be a project manager. You're not going to deal with that. Don't worry about it. And yet, I had these guys alongside me. Charlie, shout out to Charlie. Charlie was 56 when he and I got to college together. Charlie had been a superintendent for God knows how long, and Charlie helped me understand how the world really worked in construction. And he goes, don't listen to that. He goes, if you don't understand labor, you are never going to make it. And I go, okay. So we would talk about this, that, and the other, but we would have these professors who, by the way, didn't always own the construction companies, and they'd be going, don't worry about labor, you're going to be dealing with the project. Your job is timelines, materials, change orders, whatever. And then all the guys that had owned their construction companies and sold them, and they were teaching just out of, I don't know, boredom or good faith, they were telling all of us, well, you better figure it out. You better go talk to the superintendent and learn how the labor functions and what the impacts are. That's how you're going to be a good project manager versus a decent one.
Yeah.
And to this day, it's almost impossible. But again, how do you take a college kid? I went into the service after that, but how do you take that college kid who maybe doesn't understand the labor side? How do you give them a tool that helps support them in here's roughly how labor could work, or how do I communicate with you? How do I, as a new fresh PM, communicate with you 20 plus years in the field on what I think the labor should be on my job versus what you know how it should go? You get a platform. You get a place where in real time we can all collaborate on how it could or should go. And again, it's unlock some cool things. So we've heard from the the foreman and the superintendent. It's kind of, there's an incumbency there. It's what's always been. There's also an aspect of, listen, like, they know how it goes and they're going to make it happen. Don't get in the way. Talk about why you had maybe, or where you see project managers, because we see a lot of this across the nation, like project managers being involved, and how or why are project managers?
Well, I think I've been beating that drum on almost every podcast. I think I really beat that drum today. In my opinion, there's no other way to do it. You have to form this team. You've heard the stock car analogy, our foreman driving the stock car, and how he's changing his own tires and coming out of the pits, and he went from first to last place because he didn't have a team supporting him. This is a team effort, and if you don't accept that, you're putting a hell of a lot of responsibility and trust in one or a very small group of people. You're working those individuals to death. Their job description is written such that they only can really perform. There's only enough hours in the day for them to do about half of what you're trying to get them to do, because they've got to be experts on everything, code, labor management. They have to watch the financials. I mean, it's a daunting, almost impossible task you're asking these guys to do. The thing is, they're very hard workers, and they're very smart, and they're dedicated, and that's why they're in the position they're in. But you're really not doing them much justice. So I think that in today's world, you really have to spread that across the board and get them some help in the right way, and just make your company more efficient. We're always striving for that increasing productivity. The other thing I'll say is, I know this from experience, that contractors are really good at creating their own labor shortages, and how much money that costs you can't even begin to imagine, because you're losing money on every effort you're making. You're losing money on the back end of this job because you're mismanaging it, because you're depending on people that don't have time to really make the proper analysis, but you have people sitting back at the office that can help with that, and you're really messing up the next job, because now you got to go out and hire, and that's an expensive proposition when those transitions can be made a heck of a lot easier. And, what we've been talking about, Brian, is just getting better and improving your processes and implementing the platform, so the processes in the platform can coordinate. It takes time. You have to have patience, and you have to be deliberate, right? And it takes a lot of discipline. Like I said last night, Rome wasn't built in a day, but we weren't on that job. There's a good solid path to get to where you want to go if you have the vision.
Two things. What are two things that you believe project managers should be involved with regarding a workforce management platform or initiative? What are two things that they should do?
Well, number one is one of the things they're doing already is they're doing monthly projections. They're working on earned value. Some contractors call it monthly projections. I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. And they're predicting where this job is going to turn out at the end, right? That's the financials. Is that being communicated to the labor managers? So he may be taking a 5% profit on a job, and that move cuts the labor force down on that particular job. You have to reduce the curve. You have to make the adjustment, or you're guaranteed you're going to lose it, right? So that has to happen. Well, who's going to make that happen, right? In the past, and I was guilty of this, before we had the platform, the project manager and the foreman would figure they're farther ahead than what the labor budget was, and they'd take a profit. And then maybe they'd tell me, maybe they wouldn't. Maybe I'd catch it on the WIP report, maybe I wouldn't. But there was nothing in place to ensure that happened, that communication happened, right? And if they did come up and present me with what they've done, my reaction usually was, I hope you're right, we're going to do the best we can, but the words that I just hate to hear today is, it's going to take what it takes. Because nothing can be truer than that, and that can be very detrimental to the profitability of that project.
What a cop-out.
But it is in a way.
It's going to take what it's going to take, but that's the same thing as me saying, well, I could use 50 tanks to take one hilltop. That doesn't mean that's acceptable.
Right. That's we're saying the same thing. Yeah. So then that's number one. They're doing the earned value analysis. If they help with the labor scheduling, right? They're looking at the curve, and they know the effect that adjustment to the earned value had on the labor budget, and they adjust it in the platform, then the labor manager is going to see that guaranteed if he's managing to the curve. And what that does is it solidifies your decision. It gives you a better chance to reach that goal than any other way of doing it. So those are two very basic, simple things.
So wait. Number one I had, that was a lot. Number one I had is PMs need to align the WIP to what the labor plan is.
The earned value or the monthly projections.
Monthly projections.
Yep.
Align that to the labor plan.
Yep.
What's your second?
Well, that was the two parts.
Does that involve requests?
Well, that's all part of it too. Okay, so the PMs, like I said very early in this, a request is a request. I don't care if you have a platform or not. They're doing that, right? They're doing that.
Sure.
Well,
a lot of companies we talk to, the foreman calls the super, and the super sends them guys.
Yeah, I mean that happens. I'll give you that. But a lot of times the PM is aware of it, right? So formally making the request, it really doesn't matter as long as there's checks and balances. If you decide that the foreman is going to make the request, well, then the PM should know that happened.
And how does the PM know, or how does the foreman know when one or the other makes a request? They have access to the real-time picture.
Exactly. They know it. They get a notification that this request has been put in.
They can go see it.
And so, but the big thing is tying that labor schedule to the earned value analysis. It's paramount that happens, because that's what controls the budget. And that's really, if you get the PMs to start understanding why that's so important, and why you have to balance your checkbook every month. You have to align that. If you put in your earned value analysis and you've taken that 5% and you don't adjust the labor curve, in the platform you can see that they're misaligned. That's not acceptable. That is not acceptable, because you're telling two stories on the same job, and you're talking to the financial people in a different way than you are talking to the labor managers. They have to align.
Different languages.
And that will increase your profit margin.
Dustin, two things that you'd want to tell somebody about just team approach or the platform. It's probably going to get cut out, but I mean, you can say.
First one would be just buy in. start something new. Understand you need to make some changes for the better of your organization. It's going to be a journey. There's no doubt about it. There's going to be hiccups in the road.
Tell me how long that journey takes.
6 months.
At least, yes. That's it, and it is not 30 days. And we tell people we try to do it in 90 days. Let's be real. If you fuck up the integration, it's going to take 6 months instead. It's going to take time. These things take time.
Yeah. When you ask me that, when I hear that from a contractor, I'm not comfortable giving an answer, because it's almost like a change of lifestyle. You've decided you're going to go down this road, and you are going to make this work, but this is the way we're doing it now, right? How do you know when you've achieved it?
And you may never be there because
well, you're always working on something different.
Yeah,
right?
there's going to be constant improvements.
You're always trying to improve. So I think the better answer to that is it's a change of lifestyle, and we're going to get there. And I really don't care, because it's like dieting.
It's
right?
gonna happen.
It's just like, okay, I've decided that I'm going to eat healthy, and just by doing that, eventually I will weigh less. And I think that's kind of similar to how you got to approach that.
Our friend, go ahead.
In 6 months, you'll be on a path
Yes.
of constant improvement,
Yes.
more than likely.
Yeah.
But it's going to take you 6 months to navigate where you're
readjust.
going.
Move the milk.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep. Thank you.
Bring it home.
Sure, I like
Bring it
that
home.
one. I like that one, Brian.
Let's
I'll
do
give
it.
you that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've got it. 1 out of 10. Broke clock right twice. Yeah. But Dustin's point. If you have an executive vision, you can also tell in that 6 months. Okay, I can see that we're taking one more step. These are hopefully just little nuggets to chew on and consider. And if they can bring you any kind of help in your organization, that's all we're trying to do, is just consider there's stuff happening out there in the world outside of your four walls, and we want to help bring whatever we can to help. You guys have been listening to Gary and I for a while. You're about to start hearing a lot more from some other members of our team, like Dustin, who's been in the industry, in the seat for 20 plus years. Jesse Jones is in our organization, on our team, 20 plus years. We're going to try to continue to bring you more of our team, more customers, and let you just hear it from other people of what's really going on when it comes to labor operations and workforce management and construction. And thank you, everybody, again, all those people that have helped us and have listened and contributed and supported. It means the world to us, and we appreciate it, and we're excited. I think we'll see if the company lets us do this again another year, but I think we're going to give it a go. But again, just thank you guys.
I'll say that this has been a rewarding experience, being able to take the time to be able to sit back, listen to all these contractors, and get their perspective on things. It's been really, really a good experience. And if you're picking up on this what we're talking about is heartfelt. It really, we joke and kid each other, but it is coming from the heart, and we are truly trying to help. And the platform's getting much better. They're making constant improvements to it, and it's exciting time. It's fun.
And on that note, construction is hard,
but it doesn't have to be.